Captain Taman stood on the bridge of the Eternal Wanderer, watching the stars drift past the view screen. His cargo ship was 3 days into a routine supply run to the outer colonies. Nothing exciting ever happened on these trips, and that was exactly how he liked it. The galaxy had enough excitement without him looking for more. The ship hummed quietly around him. It was old, patched together with spare parts and hope, but it was his. In the seat next to him, Sunho checked the navigation charts for the 100th time. The young pilot was precise, almost too careful. Behind them, Yuna worked at the engineering station, her fingers dancing across the controls as she monitored every system on the ship. Humanity had joined the Galactic Council 23 years ago. It should have been a great moment. It's a sign that humans had finally made it to the stars and found their place among other civilizations. Instead, it felt more like being the youngest child at an adult's table. The other species smiled and nodded, but they never quite took humans seriously. Humans were restricted in where they could go, what technology they could use, and what jobs they could take. The Eternal Wanderer was one of only 40 human ships allowed to operate outside. Earth's solar system, Tay-Men, had made peace with it. He hauled cargo, minded his own business, and stayed out of trouble. That was the deal. Humans kept their heads down, and maybe in a few centuries, the council would decide they were ready for real responsibilities. The communication system crackled to life, breaking the silence. At first, it was just static. Then a voice came through, broken and desperate. The words were in Kalari, one of the founding species of the council. Taman's translator chip processed the message. This is the Harmonic Dawn. Under attack. Life support failing. ... Anyone ... please. The message cut out, then repeated. It was an automated distress beacon, the kind ships sent when their crew could no longer operate the communications manually. Taman felt his chest tighten. Someone was dying out there. Location, he said sharply. Sungho's fingers flew across his console. 2 hours away at maximum speed? The signal is coming from the outer Veil sector. Yuna pulled up the information on the distressed ship. Her face went pale. Captain, that's a Kalari diplomatic vessel. There are probably 50 people on board, maybe more. Taman reached for the long-range scanner. The display showed 3 large contacts near the Kalari ship. Vreth warships. The Vreth Collective didn't belong to the Council. They were raiders, pirates, and worse. They attacked ships on the edges of Council space and disappeared before anyone could respond. How far away is the nearest Council patrol? Taman asked. Sungho checked the military channels. For days, maybe 5. For days. The Kalari would be dead in hours, not days. Taman looked at the distress signal flashing on his screen. Every few seconds, it repeated the same desperate message. He closed his eyes and thought about council regulations. There were so many rules about what humans could and couldn't do. One of those rules was very clear. Humans were not allowed to engage in rescue operations involving Council founding species without explicit authorization. The request for authorization could take 18 hours, maybe longer. He opened his eyes and looked at his crew. Yuna was staring at him, waiting. Sungho had his hand on the navigation controls, ready to move the moment Taman gave the order. At the security station, Donghan had already pulled up the ship's limited defensive systems. His expression was grim, but determined. Captain Yuna said quietly, "We're a cargo ship. We don't have weapons. We don't have armor. If we go there—" "I know," Taman said. He knew exactly what she was going to say. They could die. Probably would die. The Vreth had warships, and the Eternal Wanderer had cargo. Packed containers and hope. He thought about his daughter back on Earth. She was 8 years old, and she believed her father was a hero because he flew between the stars. What would he tell her if he came home and she asked why he didn't help people who needed him? What would he tell himself? "Hey, one!" he called to the medical officer below decks. "Prepare the medical bay for casualties. Might be a lot of them." "Understood," came the calm reply. Taman took a deep breath. Sungho set course for the Harmonic Dawn. Maximum speed. The pilot grinned. "Yes, sir," Yuna leaned forward. "Captain, if we do this, we're breaking council law. They could take away our flight license. They could send us back to Earth and never let us leave again. I know, Taman said. But here's the thing, Yuna. When we get there, I'm going to tell the Council that we never received any information about needing authorization. Our communications were glitchy. We just heard people dying and we helped them. Simple as that. Gong Hein laughed from his station. Sir, our communications are always glitchy. That's the most believable lie I've ever heard. The ship turned, its engines burning bright as it accelerated toward the distress signal. On the view screen, the stars shifted. Somewhere ahead of them, people were dying. Somewhere ahead of them, 3 Vreth warships waited. Sung-Ho pulled up the tactical display. 3 red dots surrounded 1 blue dot. The blue dot was flickering, fading. Captain, he said quietly, this is going to be interesting. Taman smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. That's one word for it. The Eternal Wanderer raced through the darkness. A single unarmed cargo ship rushing toward a fight it had no chance of winning. Behind them, they left safety and regulations and common sense. Ahead of them lay fire and death and 3 warships that would be very surprised to see them coming in the captain's chair. Taman gripped the armrests and watched the distance counter tick down. 2 hours until they arrived. 2 hours to figure out how to save 50 people with nothing but a cargo ship and determination. It would have to be enough. The harmonic dawn was dying. Taman could see it on the view screen as they dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The elegant Kaleri ship was torn open in 3 places, venting atmosphere and debris into space. Its lights flickered weakly. Around it, 3 Vreth warships circled like sharks around wounded prey. Life signs? Taman asked. Yuna checked her sensors. 47 still alive, but their life support is failing fast. They have maybe an hour left. The largest Vreth warship turned toward them. Its hull was scarred and ugly, covered in weapons. A message came through on the common channel, translated into crude English. Human vessel. This is not your concern. Leave now or be destroyed. Taman activated the communication system. His voice was steady, calm. This is Captain Taman of the Eternal Wanderer. That ship sent a distress call. We're here to help. Leave now, and we won't have a problem. There was a pause. Then laughter came through the channel. You are 1 cargo ship. We are 3 warships. You have no weapons. You will die here. Maybe, Taman said, but you'll have to go through us first to finish them off. Are you willing to waste time and ammunition on us while Council ships are on their way? It was a bluff. Council ships were days away, not hours. But the Vreth commander didn't know that. Dong Hai and Taman said quietly, What do we have? The security chief looked at his inventory. Mining explosives in Cargo Bay 3. Maintenance tools. And about 200 shipping containers we can throw at them. Now, can those containers do damage? The engineer thought for a moment. If we launch them fast enough, they'll hit like missiles. Not enough to destroy a warship, but enough to damage sensors and weapon systems. Taman nodded. Do it, Sung-Ho. I need you to fly like you're drunk. The pilot looked confused. Sir, erratic patterns. Random movements. Make it impossible for their targeting computers to predict where we'll be. Humans are good at random. Use that. Understanding dawned on Sung-Ho's face. I can do that. The Vreth warships opened fire. Plasma bolts lit up the space around them. Sunjo threw the Eternal Wanderer into a wild spin, rolling and diving in patterns that made no tactical sense. The Vreth weapons tracked them, but kept missing by meters. Their computers couldn't predict chaos. Launching containers, Yuna announced. The cargo bay doors opened, and magnetic accelerators fired shipping containers at incredible speed. They slammed into the nearest Vreth warship, denting armor and smashing sensors. The Vreth ships scattered, confused by the unexpected attack. Taman pressed the advantage. Hey, one, take a team and board the Kaleri ship. Get those people stabilized. On my way, the medical officer replied. A boarding tube extended from the Eternal Wanderer to the damaged. Harmonic dawn, Hay-1 and 3 crew members crossed over. Carrying medical supplies and emergency equipment, inside the Kaleri ship they found chaos. The elegant corridors were filled with smoke and sparks. Injured Kaleri lay everywhere, their blue-gray skin pale with shock. HFY immediately began triaging patients. Her methods were basic, almost primitive compared to Kalari medicine, but they worked. She sealed wounds with medical foam, injected stimulants to keep people conscious, and moved with quick efficiency through the ship. One of the Kaleri, an ambassador named Velteris, watched her work. His leg was broken, but he refused treatment until others were helped first. "You are human," he said, his voice weak. "Your species is restricted. You should not be here." "Yeah, well," HFY said, as she set his leg with a makeshift splint. "We heard you needed help. Restrictions seemed less important than that." Back on the Eternal Wanderer, the battle continued. Donghayan led a team that did something crazy. They put on spacesuits, loaded themselves into empty cargo containers, and had Yuna launch them at the Vreth warship. When the containers hit, the team cut their way out with plasma torches and boarded the enemy ship. The Vareth were not prepared for hand-to-hand combat. Donghayan's team fought through corridors with nothing but maintenance tools and sheer determination. They reached the engine room and planted the mining explosives they had brought. "Charges set," Donghayan reported. "We need extraction now." Sungho brought the Eternal Wanderer alongside the Vreth warship while dodging fire from the other two ships. The boarding team jumped across the gap back to their own ship. Seconds later, the explosives detonated. The Vreth warship's engines exploded, and the ship began to drift. Powerless, the Vreth commander contacted them again. His voice was different now, uncertain. "You are cargo haulers. You have no military training. You should be dead. Why do you continue fighting?" Taemin thought about the question. Why were they doing this? They could have run. They could have let the Kalari die and saved themselves. It would have been the smart choice, the logical choice. "Because they asked for help," Taemin said simply, "and humans don't leave people behind." The Vreth commander was silent for a long moment. Then his ships turned and fled into faster-than-light travel. They were gone. The sudden quiet was startling. Alarms still blared on both damaged ships, but the shooting had stopped. Taemin slumped in his chair, exhausted. "Status report," he said. "Yuna, check the systems." "We're a mess, Captain. Hull breaches on 3 decks. Main engines are damaged. Life support is running at 60%. We can't go faster than light in this condition." "The Kaleri ship. Worse than us. They can't move at all." Sungho pulled up a map. "Nearest station is Port Kepler. If we tow them, we can get there in 11 days. Maybe 12 if the engines fail." 11 days limping through space in a damaged ship, towing another damaged ship. 11 days with limited life support and no way to call for help. It sounded impossible. "Hook us up," Taemin ordered. "We're not leaving them." Over the next hour, Yuna managed to connect the 2 ships with towing cables. It was delicate work, made harder by the damage both ships had taken. Finally, the Eternal Wanderer began pulling the Harmonic Dawn toward safety in the Kaleri ship's medical bay. Ambassador Velteris lay on a bed, watching HFY treat his people. The human doctor worked without stopping, even though she was clearly exhausted. She treated Kaleri injuries with methods that seemed crude but effective. "Why?" Velteris asked her. "Your people are treated poorly by the Council. We restrict you, limit you, look down on you. Why risk your lives for us?" HFY paused in her work. She looked at the ambassador with tired but kind eyes. "Because you needed help. That's all that matters." Velteris didn't understand, but as he watched the humans work tirelessly to save people who had never shown them respect, something shifted in his mind. These were not the simple, primitive creatures the Council believed them to be. The 2 ships crawled through space, both barely functional, heading toward a station that was 11 days away. Behind them, 3 Vreth warships had fled in confusion, unable to understand the species that fought with nothing but cargo containers and refused to give up. Ahead of them lay a long, dangerous journey that would test everyone aboard both ships. But for now, 47 Kaleri were alive who should have been dead, and one human cargo captain had just started something that would change the galaxy forever. Day 3 of the journey, and everything was falling apart. Una sat in the engine room, surrounded by exposed wires and failing systems. She had been awake for 36 hours straight, running from one crisis to another. Every time she fixed one problem, 2 more appeared. The Kolari engineer, Sojin, watched her work with growing amazement. Una was using parts that didn't belong together, bypassing systems that should never be bypassed, and somehow keeping both ships running. It defied everything Sojin had learned in her decades of training. That should not work, Sojin said, as Una connected to incompatible power systems with what looked like spare wire and hope. Una shrugged. It doesn't have to work forever, just has to work for 8 more days. But the safety protocols are suggestions right now, Una interrupted. She wiped sweat from her forehead and moved to the next failing system. Look, I know this isn't proper engineering, but proper engineering requires proper parts, and we don't have those. So we improvise. Sojin had never heard of engineering as improvisation. Engineering was precise, calculated, done according to specifications. What Una was doing looked like chaos, but it was working. On day 5, the water recycling system failed on both ships. Taman gathered both crews together. We need to cut our water usage by half. That means short showers, no waste, and everyone stays hydrated enough to function, but no more. The Kolari looked worried. Their species needed more water than humans. Ambassador Velteris stepped forward. My people cannot survive on reduced water for 6 more days. Then my people will reduce our intake further, Taman said. We can handle dehydration better than you can. Velteris stared at him. You would suffer so my people can survive? Yes. It was such a simple answer, delivered without hesitation. Velteris felt something shift in his understanding of humans. These were not the simple creatures he had believed them to be. On day 7, disaster struck. The main reactor on the Eternal Wanderer began to fail. If it went critical, both ships would be destroyed. Una ran the calculations and delivered the bad news to Taman. Someone needs to go inside the reactor core and manually reset the system. The radiation levels are lethal. Even in a protective suit, they'll have maybe 30 minutes before the exposure becomes fatal. Taman nodded slowly. I'll do it. No, Sung-ho said immediately. I'm faster. I can get there and back quicker. I'm going, Dong-Hyun insisted. Security's my responsibility, and keeping everyone safe includes this. The medical bay needs me to prepare for radiation treatment, Haewon said. But if no one else volunteers, I'll go. Even young crew members who rarely spoke up were volunteering. Every single human on the ship was willing to die to save the others. Ambassador Velteris, watching from the doorway, felt his throat tighten. He had never seen anything like this. In Kolari culture, such a mission would require debates, analysis, perhaps even a lottery system to choose who would make the sacrifice. These humans simply stepped forward without thinking. I have the most flight experience, Sun-ho said firmly. I can navigate the core layout faster than anyone. Captain, and that's final. Taman wanted to argue, but he knew Sung-ho was right. 30 minutes. If you're not out by then, I'm coming in after you. Sung-ho grinned. If I'm not out in 30 minutes, you'd just be making things worse, sir. He put on the radiation suit and entered the reactor core. The heat was incredible, and even through the suit, he could feel the radiation pressing against him like a physical weight. He moved through the maze of conduits and systems, his training guiding him through the complex layout. 20 minutes passed, then 25. On the bridge, everyone watched the timer. Yune's hands were clenched so tight her knuckles were white. Taman stood ready to put on a suit and go in after his pilot, at 28 minutes. Sung-ho's voice came over the radio. Reset complete. Coming out now. He stumbled out of the reactor core at 29 minutes and 30 seconds. The moment he cleared the door, he collapsed. Haewon and her medical team rushed him to the medical bay. The radiation exposure was severe. Sung-ho would need extensive treatment and would be sick for weeks, but he would survive. Both ships would make it to the station. Ambassador Velteris visited Sung-ho in the medical bay. The young pilot was pale and weak, but he smiled when the ambassador entered. That was foolish, Velteris said. You nearly died. Yeah, but I didn't, Songho replied. Guess I'm lucky. Lucky. The human had voluntarily entered a lethal environment, suffered radiation poisoning, and called it luck. Velteris was beginning to understand that humans defined words differently than other species. As the journey continued, the ambassador observed everything. He watched Yuna work impossible hours, keeping systems running that should have failed days ago. He watched Donghan distribute food rations, making sure everyone ate, even when supplies ran low. He watched Heiwan treat injuries and illness with whatever materials she could find, never complaining about the lack of proper equipment. Most of all, he watched how the humans interacted with his people. They shared their limited food. They gave up their sleeping quarters so injured Kalari could rest comfortably. They made jokes and told stories to keep morale up, even when their own situation was desperate. On day 9, Veltoris began sending detailed reports to the Galactic Council. He documented everything he saw: the impossible repairs, the selfless sacrifices, the determination that defied logic. He wrote about humans enduring conditions that would kill most Council species. He described their ability to solve problems with creativity instead of established procedures. His final report before reaching the station was simple: we have misunderstood humanity. They are not primitive, they are not simple. They are something we have never encountered before, and we need to reassess everything we think we know about them. On day 11, Port Kepler appeared on the view screen. The station was a beautiful sight, all lights and docking bays and safety. The Eternal Wanderer limped into dock, pulling the Harmonic Dawn behind it. Both ships were barely functioning. The Eternal Wanderer would never fly again. The Harmonic Dawn would take a year to repair, but every single person aboard both ships was alive. As the docking clamps locked into place and fresh air began flowing into the ships, Taman sat in his captain's chair and finally let himself relax. They had made it. Against all odds, against all logic. They had saved 47 Kalari and brought them home. Ambassador Velteris came to the bridge. He looked at the exhausted human captain and did something he had never done before. He bowed deeply, a gesture of profound respect in Kalari culture. Thank you, he said simply, for all of it. Taman smiled tiredly. Just did what anyone would do, no? Velteris said firmly. You did what humans do, and the galaxy needs to see it. 3 weeks later, Taman and his crew received a summons to appear before the Galactic Council. They were being charged with multiple violations of Council law. The message was clear: humanity had stepped out of line, and they would be punished for it. But as they prepared for the trial, none of them regretted their choice. They had saved lives, so that was worth whatever punishment came next. The Galactic Council chambers were massive, designed to make visitors feel small. Taman stood in the center of the circular room, surrounded by representatives from dozens of species. Above him, counselors sat in elevated seats, looking down at the humans like judges at a trial, because that was exactly what this was. A trial. Counselor Thex of the Rulani species led the prosecution. He was tall and elegant, with silver skin that gleamed under the chamber lights. His voice was smooth and cold as he read the charges. Captain Taman and the crew of the Eternal Wanderer are charged with violating Council Regulation 47, which prohibits lesser species from engaging in rescue operations of founding species without authorization. They are charged with violating Regulation 103, which prohibits unauthorized military action. They are charged with destroying a Wrath vessel, an act that could be considered an act of war. They ignored direct Council commands and endangered Council property. The list went on and on. Each charge sounded worse than the last. When Nex finally finished, he looked at Timon with something like pity. Captain, you and your crew face expulsion from the Council. Humanity's probationary status will be revoked. Your species will be confined to your home system. It's forbidden from traveling beyond your own solar system for a minimum of 100 years. Do you understand the charges? Taman nodded. I do. How do you plead? Taman looked around the chamber at all the alien faces staring down at him. He thought about the regulations he had broken, the rules he had ignored. He thought about 47 people who were alive because he had broken those rules. We heard people dying, he said simply. We helped them. If that's a crime, then yes. We're guilty. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Counselor Vex looked frustrated. You do not seem to understand the severity of your situation. Your actions could have started a war. You violated protocols that have kept the peace for centuries. You acted without thought or planning. We acted because people needed help, Taman replied. And we couldn't wait for permission while they died. That is not your decision to make. Vex's voice rose. The Council exists to make such decisions. Individual species, especially young and inexperienced ones, cannot simply act on impulse. That is why we have rules. That is why humanity was placed under restrictions. You have proven exactly why those restrictions are necessary. Before Timon could respond, the doors to the chamber opened. Ambassador Valteris entered, walking with a cane. His leg had healed but still bothered him. Behind him came 46 other Kalari, all survivors from the Harmonic Dawn. Counselor Valteris said, his voice carrying through the chamber, I request permission to speak as a witness. Vex looked annoyed, but nodded. Permission granted. Valtoris walked to the center of the chamber and stood beside Taman. I have submitted a full report of everything that occurred during our rescue and the 11 days we spent traveling to safety. I have documented human capabilities that this council has overlooked and misunderstood. With your permission, I would like to present my findings. The head counselor, an ancient being named Carthon, gestured for him to continue. The council has labeled humans as primitive, impulsive, and unsuitable for full membership, Valteris began. I believed this myself. But after spending 11 days watching these humans work, I've realized we are wrong. Dangerously wrong. He activated a holographic display. Images appeared in the air above them, showing the damaged ships, the makeshift repairs, the desperate journey. Humans evolved as what they call persistence hunters. Their bodies are built for endurance. They can survive in conditions that would kill most council species. During our journey, we had to reduce water rations. The humans voluntarily took less so my people could survive. They worked in oxygen levels that would render Kalari unconscious. They endured without complaint. The display showed Yuna working in the engine room. This human engineer, Yuna, kept both ships running with improvised repairs that should not have been possible. She worked for days without sleep, using her creativity to solve problems in ways our training never taught us. Next came images of Sung-Ho entering the reactor core. This pilot voluntarily exposed himself to lethal radiation to save everyone aboard both ships. When I asked him why, he called it luck that he survived. Luck. As if his sacrifice was a casual thing. Valteris turned to face the council directly. But the most important thing I learned is this. Humans form protective bonds with other species. They risked their lives for people they did not know. People from a species that has treated them with condescension and disrespect. They did not do this for reward or recognition. They did it because someone needed help. Counselor Vex interrupted. Ambassador, your gratitude is understandable, but it does not change the fact that they broke council law. Rules exist for a reason. I am aware, Valtoris said calmly. But I ask you to consider why we created those rules. We restricted humanity because we were afraid. Every species in this council spent thousands of years developing space travel before meeting other civilizations. Humans achieved it in a single century. Their development is unprecedented. It frightens us. He paused, letting his words sink in. But fear is not a reason to limit a species that has proven its worth. In 3 weeks, these humans demonstrated more courage, more compassion, and more dedication to the Council's principles than we have shown in centuries of peace. The Kalari survivors stepped forward. One by one, they testified about what the humans had done. Sojin spoke about Yuna's engineering genius. Arathan, the Kalari physician, described Haywon's medical skills and dedication. Others told stories of humans sharing food, giving up comfort, working impossible hours to keep everyone alive. When the last testimony finished, Valteris made his proposal. A move that humanity be granted full council membership with all rights and privileges. The Kalari formally volunteered to sponsor humanity's elevation. The chamber erupted in debate. Some counselors supported the motion. Others argued against it. The discussion went on for hours. Finally, Counselor Thex stood. The chamber fell silent. "I have argued against humanity's membership," he said. "I still believe they are dangerous. But Ambassador Valteris is correct about one thing. We have been at peace for so long that we have forgotten what it means to fight for something, to sacrifice for others. These humans reminded us of principles we have forgotten." He looked at Taman. "I will not stand in the way of this vote. Let the council decide." The vote was called. Taman watched as lights appeared above each counselor's seat. Green for yes, red for no. The lights flickered into existence one by one. The chamber held its breath. When the final vote was counted, the result appeared on the main display. Humanity had been granted full council membership by a margin of 3 votes. The chamber exploded with noise. Some counselors celebrated. Others sat in silence, uncertain about what they had just done. Taman stood in the center of it all, barely able to process what had happened. Valteris placed a hand on his shoulder. "Welcome to the council, Captain." As full members, later, as the crowd dispersed, Counselor Thex approached Taman privately. The tall Rulani looked troubled. "I argued against you not because I doubted your courage," Dex said quietly, "but because I feared it. The galaxy has been at peace for 3 centuries. Peace has made us comfortable, even soft. You reminded us what it means to fight for something. That is dangerous knowledge, Captain. I hope your species uses it wisely." Taman met his gaze. "We will, because we remember what it's like to be the ones calling for help and getting no answer. We won't let others feel that way if we can help it." Vex nodded slowly and walked away. Taman looked at his crew, all of them still processing what had happened. They had broken the rules and changed the galaxy. 6 months after the trial, everything had changed. Human ships now traveled freely throughout Council space. Una had been appointed chief engineer of the new Galactic Emergency Response Fleet, working with engineers from a dozen species to design faster, more efficient rescue vessels. Hay-1 was running the first interspecies medical exchange program, teaching human techniques to alien doctors and learning alien medicine in return. Sung-Ho, fully recovered from his radiation exposure, was training Council pilots in what they now called adaptive flight patterns. The official term sounded better than flying like you're drunk, but it meant the same thing. His classes were always full. Dong Han had become the head of a new security training program. He taught improvisation, creative problem-solving, and what to do when you had no weapons and no backup. His students learned that sometimes the best tool was the one you made from whatever was around you, Captain. Taman commanded a new vessel called the Unbroken Dawn. It was faster and better equipped than the Eternal Wanderer, built specifically for rapid response missions. His crew was mixed now, including Sojin from the Kellery engineering team and a Rulani tactical officer named Krenvar. The galaxy was learning to see humans differently. News coverage of the Harmonic Dawn rescue had spread across every world in Council space. Humans were no longer seen as primitive newcomers. They were the species that answered the call. But the real test came on a quiet day in the middle of routine patrol. The distress signal arrived at 0300 hours. Ship time. Taman was pulled from sleep by the urgent alarm. He stumbled to the bridge, still half asleep, and found his crew already at their stations. "What do we have?" he asked. Krenvar pulled up the signal. "Mining colony on Theta Persei 4, population 12,000, 7 different species. A solar flare is building. They have 72 hours to evacuate before the radiation wave hits." Taman felt ice in his stomach. "How far away are Council evacuation ships?" 90 hours minimum. The colony is in a remote system. There's no way to get them out in time. 72 hours to evacuate 12,000 people, and help was 90 hours away. The math was simple and brutal. Everyone on that colony was going to die. "Send a message to any human ships in the area," Taman ordered. "Emergency response protocol. We need everyone who can fly." Over the next 2 hours, 23 human ships changed course toward Theta Persei 4. They were cargo haulers. Mining ships, even a passenger liner that was supposed to be on its way to a vacation destination. Every captain made the same choice without hesitation. Council observers watched in alarm as the human fleet converged. "Those are civilian vessels," one observer noted. "They have no evacuation equipment. They're not designed for this." "Tell them to turn back," another counselor said. "This is a tragedy, but throwing away human lives won't change anything." But no one could contact the human ships. They were already in faster-than-light travel, racing toward a dying colony. The unbroken dawn arrived first. The colony was in chaos. People were panicking, trying to gather belongings, saying goodbye to homes they would never see again. Except there was nowhere to go. No ships to carry them away. Then, 24 human vessels dropped out of faster-than-light. Travel above the colony. Tay-Min opened a channel to all ships. "All right, people. We have 72 hours to evacuate 12,000 colonists. We don't have proper evacuation equipment, so we improvise. Pack them into cargo holds, sleeping quarters, maintenance corridors, anywhere there's space and air. Forget safety regulations. Forget comfort. We just need them alive." Yuna had already started working. She created a network link between all the human ships, coordinating them like a single massive fleet. "I'm setting up a priority system. Ships make runs to the colony, load as many people as possible, transfer them to the nearest station, then come back for more. We keep going until everyone is out, or we run out of time." The evacuation began. Human ships landed on the colony surface and opened their cargo bays. Colonists rushed aboard hundreds at a time. The ships were designed to carry maybe 50 passengers. They were loading 500, 600, pushing every system to the breaking point. Sung-Ho coordinated the flight schedules. Ships descended, loaded, ascended, and jumped to the nearest station in a carefully timed dance. There was no room for error. If one ship's timing was off, it could cause a cascade of delays that would doom thousands. Hours turned into days. The human crews worked without sleep, taking stimulants to stay awake and alert. They made trip after trip, each time cramming more people into spaces never meant to hold them. Ship systems began failing from the stress. Life support strained. Engines overheated. But they kept going. On day 2, Tayman's ship developed a critical engine problem. Krenvar reported they could make one more trip, maybe 2, before the engines failed completely. "Then we make 2 more trips," Tayman said. So Jin, who had learned human improvisation well, managed to coax 1 extra trip out of the failing engines by bypassing half the safety systems. It was dangerous, possibly suicidal, but it saved 400 more lives. As the 72-hour deadline approached, the last group of colonists boarded the last human ships. The solar flare was building, visible as a growing bright spot on the sun's surface. They had maybe an hour left. All ships. "This is Tayman. Final run. Everyone get clear." The human fleet lifted off from Theta Persei for the last time. The ships were overloaded by 300%. Systems were failing. Some ships were venting atmosphere, but they flew. The solar flare erupted just as the last ship entered faster-than-light travel. The radiation wave washed over the empty colony, sterilizing everything it touched. If anyone had still been there, they would have died instantly, but no one was there. 12,000 colonists were safe, crammed into 24 human ships that had no business carrying so many people. The ships limped to the nearest stations, some barely holding together. When they docked, colonists poured out, alive and grateful. The final count came in. 0 casualties. 12,000 people saved. Every single one. The rescue was broadcast across the galaxy. News stations showed images of human ships sparking and smoking as they delivered their passengers to safety. One image became iconic. Tayman carrying an elderly Rulani colonist in his arms, his uniform scorched, his ship burning behind him. Counselor Vex arrived at the station 2 days later to inspect the human ships. What he found shocked him. Ships with hull breaches, failed engines, and systems that should never have been pushed so hard. It was a miracle any of them had survived. He found Tayman in the hospital, being treated for smoke inhalation. The captain was arguing with doctors, insisting he was fine, and needed to get back to his ship? Captain Tom and Dex said. You risked 23 ships and 600 human lives for colonists you did not know. Taman looked at him tiredly. No, counselor. I risked 23 ships. The 600 humans volunteered. I couldn't have stopped them if I tried. Why? Dex asked. What drives your species to such extremes? Taman thought about the question. It was the same one the Vreth commander had asked months ago. He had answered then, but now he understood it better. We're not special, he said quietly. We just remember what it's like to be the one sending the SOS. For most of our history, we were alone on one planet, vulnerable, calling out to an empty universe, hoping someone was listening. Maybe that's why we answer when others call. We know what it's like when no one comes. Dex stood silently for a long moment. Then he did something unusual for a Rulani. He smiled. That conversation needs to be shared with the galaxy. Oh. The recording of their conversation was leaked to the press within hours. It went viral, spreading to every world in council space. The message resonated with billions of people. Humans were not just brave or skilled or determined. They were the species that remembered being alone and afraid, and they refused to let others feel that way. 1 month later, the Council established a new organization, the Rapid Response Corps. It was led by humans but open to all species. Their motto, suggested by Ambassador Veltoris, was simple. We hear, we come. Training facilities opened on a dozen worlds. Thousands of volunteers from hundreds of species signed up to learn human methods. They learned improvisation, endurance, and the most important lesson: when someone needs help, you answer. No matter the cost, no matter the risk. You answer. 1 year after the Theta Persei evacuation, the Unbroken Dawn received another distress signal. This time it came from the edge of Council space. The caller species was unknown, their technology primitive, their situation desperate. Taman looked at his bridge crew. It was a mix of species now, working together seamlessly. Sojin at engineering, Krenvar at tactical. Humans and aliens side by side. All right, people, Taman said with a smile. Someone needs help. Let's show them what the galaxy does for its own. The ship jumped faster than light travel. On the long-range sensors, dozens of other ships appeared, all converging on the same distress signal. Human ships, Kaleri ships, Rulani ships, all racing to help people they had never met. The galaxy had learned the lesson humanity taught them. When someone calls for help, you answer, always.